What if the next big California housing story is not on the coast but inland? In 2026, that is exactly where the rental pressure is building, and the numbers are starting to prove it. California's housing map is shifting again, and this time the movement is running inland. Remote workers, hybrid professionals, and higher income renters are leaving expensive coastal hubs and looking for better value in the Inland Empire and the Central Valley. That shift has not disappeared just because office mandates came back. California state workers are still pushing back on return to office rules, and lawmakers are still debating telework protections. That tells you something important. Remote work is no longer a temporary experiment. For a lot of households, the choice is no longer about where the office is. It is about where they can actually afford to live. That is why inland demand has stayed strong. The Inland Empire and the Central Valley are getting more attention because they still offer California living without full coastal pricing. One thing that makes this inland shift different from older California migration stories is that it is happening with higher income renters in the mix. These are not just people moving because they have to. A lot of them are moving because they can work remotely, keep their income, and upgrade their housing situation at the same time. That changes the tone of the market because it brings more competition into places that used to feel like fallback options. It also changes what good value means. A city is no longer just judged by whether the rent is low. People are asking whether the unit is new enough, whether the internet is fast enough, whether the parking is easy, and whether daily life feels smooth. That means the market is rewarding places that offer comfort, not just lower monthly payments. The big story here is affordability. A six-figure salary simply goes further inland than it does in coastal markets like San Francisco, Santa Monica, or Orange County. Riverside is a good example. In April 2026, average rent in Riverside was about $1,868 a month, with one bedrooms around that same level and two bedrooms near $2,287. Another March 2026 report put Riverside's overall apartment rent at $1,809, with rent slightly down year over year. That tells you Riverside is still a competitive market, but it has not crossed into the kind of extreme pricing pressure seen on the coast. Fresno offers even more breathing room. Current 2026 data shows average rent around $1,318 per month, with studios near $1,031, one bedrooms at $1,318, two bedrooms around $1,505, and three bedrooms about $1,937. For remote workers, that difference is huge. It means a monthly budget can stretch much farther without giving up California entirely. Temecula tells a different story. Average rent there is about $2,133 a month, with two bedrooms around $2,434 and three bedrooms around $3,156. Another source shows Temecula's median rent near $3,000 across all unit types, which is a clear sign that this market is no longer the bargain it once was. Temecula is still desirable, but the discount is thinning fast. Ontario is another city worth watching. In April 2026, average rent there was about $2,028 per month, with one bedrooms around that level and two bedrooms near $2,485. Another source puts Ontario's median rent around $2,500. That makes Ontario a good example of how some inland markets are already pricing higher because of access, convenience, and demand. Madera sits on the more affordable end of the map. In April 2026, average rent there was about $1,140 a month, with studios near $753 and two bedrooms around $1,574. That puts Madera in a very different category from Ontario or Temecula, and shows that the Central Valley still has places where the rent story is much softer. Another way to look at it is this: Fresno still looks like the deepest value. Riverside is the balanced middle. Ontario is already acting more like a higher pressure inland market, and Temecula is moving farther up the pricing curve. That difference matters because not every inland city is offering the same opportunity. The 2026 interest rate environment is another reason people are staying renters instead of buyers. For mobile professionals, buying often feels too expensive or too permanent, especially when their job may be flexible, but their location is still uncertain. That is a big reason inland rentals are getting more attention. In a place like Riverside or Fresno, a renter can often get more space, better parking, and newer construction for less than they would pay on the coast. The appeal is not just financial. Remote workers are also looking for reliable internet, easy freeway access, quiet neighborhoods, and buildings that feel modern enough to work from home and comfortably. Here's the catch. Demand is rising faster than premium supply in a lot of these inland pockets. The Inland Empire's multifamily market entered 2026 with strong occupancy and continued rental pressure, with one report showing occupancy around 95.3% in stabilized assets, and another showing vacancy around 4.6% in the broader market. Those numbers do not suggest a loose market. They suggest a market where renters still have to compete, especially for the best units. That is why Class A rentals are getting squeezed. Higher income migrants are not just looking for something affordable. They want newer finishes, better amenities, dependable parking, strong internet, and layouts that work well for remote life. When those units are limited, the competition can quickly push out local renters who are counting on inland housing as the cheaper option. This is also why luxury light developments keep showing up. Developers are building for the remote worker lifestyle without going all the way into high-end luxury. The formula is simple: modern finishes, decent amenities, good connectivity, and enough comfort to feel worth the price. But inland land is still finite, especially in the better located pockets with freeway access and nearby jobs. So even when new projects come online, they often do not keep pace with demand. That is how a market stays both affordable and tight at the same time. Another thing to watch is how quickly a market can move from overlooked to crowded. Once people start talking about a city as the next affordable pocket, demand can build faster than supply can respond. That is especially true in California, where housing production moves slowly and the best located areas get absorbed quickly. You can already see that difference between cities that are still early in the cycle and cities that are starting to feel discovered. Some places still have room to breathe, while others are already seeing more applications, less negotiating room, and fewer incentives from landlords. That gap matters because it tells viewers where the opportunity still is and where it may already be shrinking. If you line up these cities, the pattern becomes really clear. Riverside is still in that middle zone where renters can find decent space without paying coastal prices, but the market is tight enough that well-priced units still move fast. Fresno still feels like the strongest value market because the price point is low enough to attract attention, but the city still has the basics people want for daily life. Ontario is more of a pressure market now because it combines access, convenience, and strong renter demand. Temecula is closer to the expensive end of the inland story. That matters because the best pocket is usually the one that still has lower rent than the coast, but also has enough amenities to make daily life easy. Once a city gets discovered by enough people, that balance changes quickly. Temecula is the clearest warning sign. It still has the lifestyle appeal, but the rent data shows it is no longer an obvious value play. Ontario is also moving into that more competitive category because it combines access, convenience, and strong renter demand. Madera shows the opposite side of the story. It still has room to breathe, and its rental numbers are much closer to the affordability side of the equation. If you are looking for the next undervalued pocket, that is the kind of market people are going to start watching more closely. The real product here is not just an apartment, it is the day-to-day experience that comes with it. That is why the most competitive inland properties are not just cheap, they are practical. They save time, reduce stress, and make it easier to keep a remote job running smoothly. That is a big reason the newest apartments are getting attention even when rents are higher than older inventory nearby. For local renters, that creates a new reality. They are no longer competing only with people in their own income bracket. They are also competing with people who brought a coastal salary inland and are willing to pay a little more for convenience and comfort. That can change the entire feel of a market. Looking ahead to 2027, the inland rental story probably does not cool off quickly. The most likely outcome is continued pressure in the best connected inland pockets, especially where demand keeps arriving from coastal California. That does not mean every inland city will explode in price, but it does mean the cities with the best mix of affordability, access, and newer housing may keep getting discovered first. If you are a remote worker trying to find the next undervalued market, the checklist is pretty simple. Look for cities with lower rent than the coast, reliable broadband, decent freeway access, newer rental stock, and enough services nearby that daily life feels easy. When all of those pieces line up, that is usually where the next wave of demand starts. Temecula is a good reminder of what happens when a pocket gets too popular. The bargain disappears, the competition rises, and the market stops feeling like a secret. The bigger story is that California's economic geography is changing. The line between coastal wealth and inland wealth is getting blurrier because more high income renters are spreading into markets that used to be overlooked. That is not just a housing trend, it is a long term shift in where opportunity lives inside the state. The next big California housing story is not just who can still afford the coast, but which inland pockets still have value before the crowd gets there. Subscribe to Housing IQ for more California housing market updates, migration trends, and rental news.